In the spring of 218 BCE, Hannibal Barca stood at the foot of the Alps with an army of roughly 90,000 soldiers, 12,000 cavalry, and 37 war elephants. Ahead of him, the highest mountain range in Europe, in late autumn, with snow already falling on the passes. Behind him, a city called Saguntum that he had just spent 8 months besieging, and a declaration of war from Rome that made everything he was about to do irreversible. What Hannibal did next, marching that army over the Alps in winter and descending into northern Italy, is still considered one of the most audacious military movements in history. This is the Alps crossing. First, the spark that started it all. Saguntum was a city on the eastern coast of Spain, south of the Ebro River, technically within Carthage's sphere under the terms of the Ebro Treaty. But Saguntum had made itself an ally of Rome, and Rome had guaranteed its protection. Hannibal knew exactly what besieging Saguntum meant. He was not confused about the consequences. He besieged it anyway in 219 BCE and spent 8 months taking it by storm. Rome sent envoys to Carthage demanding that Hannibal be handed over for punishment. The Carthaginian Senate debated. When the Roman envoy asked for a direct answer, war or peace, he gathered his toga into a fold and said he held war and peace within it, and Carthage could choose which he let fall. Carthage chose war. What happened next is one of history's great examples of doing the thing nobody thought was possible, because nobody thought to guard against it. Rome's plan for the Second Punic War was straightforward. Send one army to Spain to fight Hannibal on his own ground, and send another army to Africa to threaten Carthage directly. The war would be fought on Carthaginian territory, far from Italy, exactly as the First Punic War had been. Hannibal had a different plan. He would march his army from Spain, through southern Gaul, over the Alps, and into northern Italy, attacking Rome from the direction nobody was defending, striking at Rome's Italian allies, and breaking the confederation that gave Rome its manpower advantage. It was a plan that required crossing the Pyrenees, the Rhone River, and then the Alps. It required moving nearly 100,000 men and dozens of elephants through hostile territory, across some of the most difficult terrain in Europe, in deteriorating autumn weather. Military professionals who study it still argue about whether it was genius or madness, possibly both. Hannibal crossed the Pyrenees in the late spring of 218 BCE, losing some troops who deserted rather than face what was coming. He moved through southern Gaul, fighting off Gallic tribes who tried to block his path, and reached the Rhone River in September. The Rhone crossing was the first major logistical challenge. The river was wide, fast, and the local Gallic tribes on the far bank were hostile. Hannibal sent a force upstream to cross secretly and attack the Gauls from behind, then cross the main army while the Gauls were dealing with the flanking attack. The elephants were the real problem. Elephants do not like water, and they definitely do not like being loaded onto rafts and pushed across a major river while people fight around them. Hannibal's engineers built large rafts covered with earth and grass to make them look like solid ground, lured the elephants onto them, and then detached the rafts from the bank. Some elephants panicked and fell in. They swam to the far bank. Elephants, it turns out, are surprisingly good swimmers. All 37 made it across. Then came the Alps. The exact route Hannibal took over the Alps is one of history's great unsolved debates. Ancient sources give different accounts, and modern scholars have proposed at least a dozen different passes. The most recent scientific analysis, using pollen samples, soil chemistry, and geological surveys, suggests he used the Col de la Traversette, a high and difficult pass in the southwestern Alps. Whatever the route, the experience was brutal. The army entered the Alps in October, late in the season with snow already falling on the higher passes. The mountain paths were narrow, often barely wide enough for a single file of soldiers. Local mountain tribes, the Allobroges, attacked from above, rolling boulders onto the column and ambushing the rear guard. Hannibal had to fight his way through, while simultaneously managing the logistics of moving a massive army through impossible terrain. The cold killed men and animals. The paths were icy and treacherous. Pack animals lost their footing and fell into ravines, taking their supplies with them. Soldiers who had marched through the heat of Spain and Gaul were now struggling through alpine conditions in autumn clothing. At one point, a rockfall blocked the path entirely. A massive section of cliff had collapsed across the only viable route. Hannibal's engineers heated the rock with fire, then poured vinegar over it to crack it, then broke it up with tools. Whether this method actually works on alpine limestone is debated by chemists and historians alike. Ancient sources say it worked. The army got through. The elephants suffered badly. Many died on the descent. By the time Hannibal reached the Po Valley in northern Italy, most of the elephants were gone. The crossing took 15 days. When Hannibal assembled his army in the flatlands of northern Italy, he counted his losses. He had started with roughly 90,000 infantry. He arrived with about 26,000. He had started with 12,000 cavalry. He arrived with about 6,000. Roughly 60,000 soldiers, 2/3 of his army, had been lost to the mountains, the cold, the hostile tribes, and desertion. By any rational military calculation, the campaign should have been over. 26,000 exhausted, cold, half-starved soldiers against the largest military power in the Mediterranean world. Hannibal called his surviving soldiers together on the Italian side of the Alps and gave a speech. Ancient sources preserve versions of it that are almost certainly reconstructed rather than verbatim, but the core message is consistent. They had crossed the unpassable. Rome did not believe what they had done was possible. They had already done the hardest thing. Everything now was downhill, literally and figuratively. He also pointed out something that mattered enormously to his strategy. Northern Italy was inhabited by Gallic tribes, the Cisalpine Gauls, who had been conquered by Rome relatively recently and resented Roman rule. They were potential allies. Hannibal was not arriving in enemy territory. He was arriving in territory full of people who had reasons to hate Rome as much as he did. The Gallic tribes flocked to his banner. By the time he met the first Roman army, his force had been substantially replenished with Gallic warriors. The Romans who came north to stop him had no idea what they were about to face. The consul Publius Cornelius Scipio, father of the man who would eventually defeat Hannibal, had sailed to Spain to intercept Hannibal there, only to learn that Hannibal had already left. He rushed back to northern Italy, took command of whatever forces he could assemble, and moved to engage. He met Hannibal's cavalry at the Ticinus River in November of 218 BCE. The Romans were routed. Scipio himself was nearly killed, saved, according to Roman sources, by his 17-year-old son, who rode back into the fighting to rescue him. That young man would one day be known as Scipio Africanus. But that is a story for a later episode. The Romans fell back. More legions were coming. The war for Italy was beginning. Hannibal had done the impossible. He had brought a Carthaginian army over the Alps in winter and arrived in the heartland of Roman Italy. He had done it with a fraction of the force he started with, in conditions that should have destroyed the campaign entirely, and he had not yet fought a single major battle. Next time in the Hannibal series, the 3 battles that defined Hannibal's Italian campaign and still stand as masterpieces of tactical thinking 2,000 years later: Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and Cannae, the battle that nearly ended Rome. Until then, this has been Drawn from History. Thanks for watching.